let's go ahead and we'll call this meeting to order real quick, and we'll start with introductions. So far on our side, I see we have Commissioner Schutte, we have Commissioner Trask, we have Kelly Frazier, who handles our facilities, Frank Pinter, who you know, and Diane, who you know. What do you have on your end there?
So here, Bill Valdez, a partner at KMB Architects and acting as the principal in charge and project manager. I have Sherry O'Brien, who's a partner at KMB Architects and acting as our lead programmer and planner. And then I'll let Jeff introduce himself and Alexander. They're with PFIC, and they are the ones that will be presenting the majority of the information today with regard to tax-exempt financing and what those alternatives look like. So Jeff, Alexander.
Okay. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Great. I appreciate the opportunity to attend this meeting today and present our company. I'm Jeffrey Tamkin, President and Chairman of Public Facilities Investment Corp. Also joining me today is Alexander Zaparana, our Vice President of Development, and we're pleased to present ours based upon your criteria, a tax-exempt financing development and plan for the new county jail. So should I just launch in to our presentation? Okay, Alexander?
Yeah, sure. Can everyone see it?
Yep, there it is.
There we go. Whoops. So I'll give you a little background on our company. Since we started out in next slide. We started out in 1969, building and leasing for corporations as well as cities and counties. We've done about 200 projects now, both public and private, in 96 cities and 36 states, in the state of Washington as well as in the state of Oregon. We specialize in the development and tax-exempt leaseback financing of public safety facilities for cities, counties, states, and other public agencies. Our comprehensive program, and this is the real gist of a P3, is that it transfers the risk of the design, the construction, and the financing from the public sector to the private sector. What this does, it enables the development and financing process to lock in today's construction costs and interest rates. Because as you may know, construction costs, labor and material are increasing rapidly due to the supply chain, as well as projects that have been stalled or delayed over the past year and a half because of COVID are now coming online, and there's a big demand. But our company, we provide a comprehensive turnkey program that includes pre-planning, feasibility analysis, and site location. We work closely with Bill and KMB for that part of our service. We have always, as a developer, teamed with independent architects, engineers, and contractors. But we assume the risk of the design, the engineering, the construction, and we provide tax-exempt financing. As being a 501c3, we can access the tax-exempt market for terms up to 35 years. Our program works not only for ground-up development, but also it works for the renovation and expansion of existing facilities. And we also have a program of asset monetization if you wanted to raise capital and sell a project and then lease it back. The reason that our program has been gaining more traction is that the public sector is now facing reduced budgets. And there's still that ever constant need for modern facilities, and infrastructure continues to grow every day. Actually, the American Society of Civil Engineers estimates that there's 13 trillion with a T, $1 trillion worth of infrastructure that needs to be either renovated or replaced. So we help our clients develop and finance their facility and infrastructure needs. With KMB, we determine the scope and the programming needs of the project. We're all in collaboration with Mason County and your stakeholders. I think Bill has analyzed your current operations, your future space needs. You've identified site locations, layouts, designs. Bill has interviewed key staff, stakeholders to determine the facility needs. And we do this in conjunction with them to ensure that the project programming and design meets the needs of the county while remaining within a budget that's affordable and politically viable. KMB also does the actual design of the project, And with them, we monitor the estimated construction costs and subsequent lease payments, trying to identify value engineering or additional alternatives so that the estimated cost is lower or higher than the project budget. So it doesn't go lower or higher, and then we stay right on budget. We engage, and this can be through negotiation or through bidding to meet procurement laws. We engage a general contractor who provides us a maximum price for the construction of the project. This can, as I just said, can be negotiated, design, build, or bid out to qualified firms. The most important thing is we ensure that local trades and subcontractors are utilized to reduce costs and also keep funds within the community. And one of the methods that we currently use, if you have a site that you own, we can ground lease that site for up to 35 years on an unsubordinated basis so that the title is never affected by the financing or by the construction. So it all remains free and clear in the name of the county. In the event, as you are looking at other sites, if you do find another site that you prefer that you don't currently own, we can provide the funds to purchase that new site and put it into the package of financing. So in other words, PFIC provides leaseback financing for 100% of the project. And we do it at tax exempt rates. We're a nonprofit, a 501c3 development entity. So we can generate the same type of rates that you would get if you were to go to the bond market or if you were to borrow the money. But under our program, you don't have to borrow any money and you don't have to issue any bonds. You always can retain the right to fund this project with your own funds or finance it through your own preferred 501c3. But if you don't, then we can step in and do that for you. Now, we're asking for a 35 year lease, which effectively gives you the lowest annual payment. But upon expiration of the lease, or if you prepay it early, title of the project transfers to Mason County for $1. In other words, during the financing, during the 35 years, we're paying off the financing. And at the end of the financing, you own the project free and clear. Here's some typical examples of our financing highlights. As I mentioned before, our rates mirror Mason County's borrowing rates. We can do terms up to 35 years. We also have short-term financing available for in the event that you think there might be a grant coming down the road. Maybe somebody wants to have their name on the building for whatever reason. We can make all of it short-term financing or just a portion of it through, which can then be used to when potential grants or bond issues come through. But it is 100% of the project cost. And this money can also be combined with other funds like grants, cash on hand, and so forth. But the important thing is that the lease payments never increase. They're flat for the entire term. The rate for day one is the same as the rate at the end of 35 years. So if rates go up, these rates don't go up, they stay flat. Also, there's no lease payment during the design and construction period, so that you don't, until you occupy the building, you're not out of pocket any lease payment. Mason County can also prepay the lease at our cost at any time and cancel the lease and pay off the financing. We also can include within our financing furniture, fixtures, equipment, and new technology. One of the interesting things that I think has been discussed is what your annual payments. Now, we can take your current revenues and cash flows in conjunction with your financial or municipal advisor and estimate how much money can be raised. And based upon that, KMB can design a project or modify the existing project to meet those current revenues and cash flows. And that's how we would work out the financing. We also can make this financing subject to annual appropriations so that the county council each year would have to appropriate the money to make the lease payment. You can also provide your own financing under our program at your option. So we're always continually reviewing all available financing options and sources to make sure that we have the most effective financing structure that meets your financial needs. So going in specifically into the project that you're looking at, these are typical terms, and this is based upon current rates. So we show that the building lessee would be Mason County. The building lessor would be Public Facilities Partners, a 501c3. We would be the program manager, KMB would be the architect, and we can select a contractor or bid out the construction, as I mentioned before, to meet any procurement laws. what we've done today is analyze 3 different costs. One is 35 million, one is 74 million, and also 83 million. We've used a lease term of 30 years, and I might add that that lease term can be shorter or longer depending on the desire of the county. Again, if you own a site, the project site would be leased from the county on an unsubordinated basis, so the title is not affected by financing or construction. And again, if you don't have a site or you want to change your site, we can provide funds to purchase a new site. The ground lessor would be Mason County if you owned the site, and the ground lessee would be Public Facilities Investment Corp. So again, at the end of the lease term, when the project financing is paid off, the project title would revert back to the county for $1 at the end of the lease term, free and clear. Now, here's what the rates look like on a 30-year term where we're just providing 100% of the capital for years 1 through 30. For a $35 million project, it would be approximately $2,080,000 per year each year. For 74 million, years 1 through 30, it would be $4,397,000 per year. For an $83 million project, years 1 through 3, it would be $4,932,000. And again, these are all estimated and subject to the fluctuations of the bond market. We've also structured an interest only for 10 years. So for the first year, or for a $35 million project, years 1 through 3, and of course, this would be the time that the project is being designed and constructed, no payments would be due from the county. Years 4 through 10, the annual payment would be $1,617,000. Years 10 through 30, we're now paying back interest and principal. So the payment goes up to $2,400,000. For a $74 million project, years 1 through 3, again, since we're providing capitalized interest, there would be no payment due from the county. Years 4 through 10, it would be $3,419,000, which would be interest only. And then years 11 through 30, where there's interest in principal, the annual payment would be $5,096,000. For an $83 million project, again, years 1 through 3 with capitalized interest, no payment would be due. Years 4 through 10, it would be $3,835,000, which would be interest only. And years 11 through 30 would be $5,715,000, which is interest and principal. These are based on a 30-year term of an interest rate of 3.05% and an annual ground lease of $1, assuming that you own the site. If we bought a site, these prices could go up slightly. The operating and maintenance costs would be the responsibility of Mason County. There's no increase in the annual payment during the 30 years. The payments remain flat. And we've also included as I mentioned before, 36 months of capitalized interest so that the county is not required to make any lease payment until the project is completed and you're actually using it. Prepayment options will also be included in the financing so that you can pay it off and take title at any time. Next. So the advantages of our program, there's a lot of advantages. One is the integrated project delivery, getting the architect, contractor, and developer together at the beginning in a collaborative process maximizes the value for Mason County. Having an expedited development schedule saves Mason County money by locking in today's construction costs and interest rates before they continue to rise. I'm sure when you started this project, rates and construction costs were lower. The important thing, again, as I mentioned about our expediting the project, is that it transfers the design, construction, and financing risk to the private sector from the public sector. But Mason County still has complete control of the development process with minimal impact on your staffing. We come in and ask you can attend as many meetings you like every day, every job meeting, anything that you would like to do, we would love to have you on board with us. But our development experience and budget controls prevents the project from being over-designed or under-designed. Mason County, if you own the land now, can retain ownership of the land through the life of the lease, or if you were to buy yourself a new site, you'd still retain ownership of the land throughout the life of the lease, and you would get title to the building the project upon lease expiration. But what this does at the end of the day, it enables the public and private sectors to focus on their core competencies. The private sector, we specialize in designing, building, and financing buildings. The public sector is focused on its administration, community service, and public safety. So you do what's best for you, and we do what's best for you to get this building built on time, on budget, and the specifications exactly what you need. So basically, that's our program, and we're free to answer any questions.
Commissioners, do you have questions? You want to start?
Sure, Commissioner Netherland, thanks. I'll jump in. Jeff, thanks for the presentation. Really interesting. Appreciate the analysis in it as well. What are some examples of projects that you've done in Washington that we might be able to look to and just sort of understand sort of the size and scope and process?
Yeah, that's why I think what you really want to do is look at KMB's. See, we're not the architect or contractor, so we're dependent upon the architect and contractor's work, and so we try to pick the best in the field. So the kind of project that you're going to get is a result of KMB's work and contractors' work. We're currently working on a sheriff station and jail in Fremont County, Idaho. This is underway as we speak. We're also working in Montrose, Colorado on the remodeling and expansion of their jail as well. Those are two current projects underway. Also, we've been working for a few years with Grays Harbor. That's where Bill and I first came together. So we've been involved with them, and they're still in constant communication with them to continue with their project once they put it back online.
Yeah, that's what I was referencing. Just not the design of the physical project, but projects that you financed.
Right. Oh, I can send you a list of projects we financed also.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That can be for the Northwest, or it can be throughout the country, but we'll get you a list.
Sure. No, I'd appreciate that. That's great.
Sharon?
I don't have any questions at the time, I think, or at this moment in time. I do appreciate the information that you had, the breakdown of the cost and the payments is what I was really interested in. So I appreciate it.
We'll send you a copy of this presentation as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
As well as a description of our development services. And
just to kind of, again, to kind of revisit where these values kind of came from, the $83 million program, that was, again, a full project budget and cost based off of the full program and the utilization of site option 2, which actually had the highest cost due to site development costs were highest at that site. And then the $74 million was the full program and developing at your existing site, which was the lowest cost, construction cost with the lowest site development costs. And then the site option 1 was in between there. So essentially we bracketed all 3 sites and all 3 site development options based off of the full program. Is that within that 74 to 83 million. The $35 million range option was just a arbitrary value that we put together that Randy provided as just, let's pick a number and we'll kind of see what that comparison is and be able to see what a lower cost or what a lower sized or a smaller size project, what that ultimate financing cost would actually be, again, all using tax exempt financing. So that's where those 3 values all came from.
And yeah, I was taking a wag at what we might be able to come up with financially from the top end of utilizing the REIT funds, the 09 funds, and the other funds that we have. It's more than what we actually can afford, but I thought just trying to be as open-minded as I possibly could. That's why when me and Frank were on the phone, we came up with that number. Some of the question I have for you that I'm still curious about. Now, one thing you need to know is we're, unlike most counties, we're not already at our limit for our bonding. So we're doing fine there. So we don't have to worry. We can get our loans and not have to worry about
Right.
our debts. But I see a couple of things I want to ask you about your company to see if it's a benefit. One problem that we have when the county does it itself and doesn't go through a private sector is we quite often get caught in the end with a whole bunch of extra costs and stuff that come up because we're the ones doing it. And there's certain things that we have to be open to for design and plan. When you're doing this, are you not restricted by that? Are you able to actually, because you're doing the high bid, are you able to actually lock them in better
Yes,
than us?
we can lock them in, and one of the advantages of using a firm such as ours is we make a proposal, and based upon those costs, that's the proposal. So, you know, we're not gonna bring in a lot of extras.
Okay. And I also noticed, and I'm saying this more, I'm asking these questions also so for the commissioners to know what I'm seeing as the benefits as well. So I see that as a benefit if we decide to do something, that we look at that strength that they do provide. Also, noticing that in your loans, you can cover the fixtures and stuff like that is
Right.
also a benefit I wanted to point out to the commission. That's not as easy when we're doing loans through a bank.
Mhm.
We'll say they don't like to finance things like the fixtures.
Right. And technology today, because jail technology today is a lot more sophisticated because of the wanting to have less manpower in the jail. So they've got a lot new technology out there, which we can finance as well as part of the project.
And Frank, if you don't mind, unmute. Is this type of kind of a higher version of what we did or what we dealt with? It was done before I got there. In regards to public works building, we did that on a lease. Was that a public-private lease, or how did we set that up? Or is that actually it wasn't. It was a lease to a governmental entity, wasn't it?
I believe so, yes. I'd have to confirm that, but yes, I believe so.
So this can be better than that. Well, not that government sucks. I'm just saying we have a private sector opportunity. It might just be better. Because I do remember going through that with the public works building when we paid it off to get that off the books because there was some issues that we were taking care of by making it private.
Correct.
And one important thing, especially if you have a government agency like that, and of course I can talk about it since I wasn't there, but it's our job with Bill of expediting the project is very important because you want to lock in those construction costs today and to wait for voter approval to go through government bureaucracy. It can take a lot longer. And look how long you've been working on this project. Not that you're bureaucratic, but if you had approved it 2 years ago with us, we would be at the ribbon cutting today.
Yeah. One of the problems that we have with setting out those prices basically is we've been kind of conservative in how we do things. So we're trying to usually focus around what we can actually afford to do now. The possibility of going out to the public is always a possibility, but the only thing that's subject that we're available to utilize at this point is one that comes up and requires a supermajority every 6 years. So if we were to go high, we could have to lay everybody off to cover a couple $1 million in costs.
Mm.
So that's our risk. So that's how we would go to the public. Do you know of another funding mechanism where we can go to the public that we haven't been briefed on yet?
Not really, but I might add that under our program, when you're talking about short of cash, this is subject to annual appropriation as well. So every year you have to vote to make the annual payment, and so that's an advantage of utilizing a service such as ours.
Well, then what is that leaves a big question. So what happens if the vote is nay?
That's it. You walk away. You don't get to use it, but you don't have to make any payments. That's the risk. And the reason that we're able to finance something that has that risk is because it's really an essential use. So our investors are insurance companies and banks and so forth, and they think that the golf course will close quicker than the jail. So they're willing to take more risks on essential uses throughout the country.
And the next question I'm going to ask you, I don't know that I know what an answer would look like, but because you're private, would you have the ability, let's say we had a catastrophe hit us and we had to sit back in our chair for a year, would you have the ability to renegotiate that easier than we ever could with the bank?
Well, it would be basically the bond terms, but I think what you'd be looking at is lower rates because assume everything goes up. So you would assume that, that the rates have gone up. So you'd be negotiating at a lower rate. Plus, we could put in a debt service reserve so that in the event you were short a portion of the payment or all of the payment for 1 year or 1 month or for 1 year, we would have money built in, or we could utilize a letter of credit if that's legal, for a debt service reserve, so that you would know you had at least a year's cushion.
Well, and that's actually that is my question. So when I'm looking at the commissioners, historically, if we have it down, we usually start to restabilize after 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And believe me, I'm not asking to take on more debt. I'm that wrong guy. I'm just always trying to look at all the different options and to share with the commission the numbers that I see and the possibilities for even doing things I may disagree with. But if there was a possibility of setting up for a 2-year cushion for protection, we usually could always come out of that.
Right.
Maybe interest only for a 2-year period or something.
We can, well, first of all, you have interest only for the first 3 years during the design and construction. So you're saving 3 years of payments right there. But we could probably set up 2 years of debt service reserve.
Interesting.
I mean, the bondholders would be happy. More cushion for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the expediting of the project is what you have to focus on to get the project up and going.
I'm looking on the money. I kind of have to hold off the project for a year with the prices the way they're going now. But so, commissioners, do you have any more questions on this one?
Yeah, just a kind of a process question, Jeff. So, let's assume we go through the rest of the study with KMB. 6 months from now, or we go through those results and we say, yep, we want to do this project. This is where we want to do it. This is what Bill is telling us it'll cost. What's your process from that point on then? What do we look at in terms of, what you need from us, and then how quickly do you turn it around? How quickly do you get out to bid and get ground broken?
Yeah, we can usually get projects financed depending on the state of the plans, anywhere from 60 to 90 days. And as soon as I work with Bill, we would get it either bid out or negotiated to a contractor, get a guaranteed maximum price and be off and running. But basically tie up have the interest rates and the construction costs tied up immediately.
So yeah, 60 to 90 days from kind of notice to direct Jeff to move forward to be able to finalize a 100% project financing package. And then from that point forward, we're able to kind of complete the design process and the permitting process, be able to bring the general contractor on board. Also during this, we've kind of talked a little bit about what the project, doing this way is a alternative project delivery. So there will need to be a approval process through CPARB, but that can easily be done. But by bringing a general contractor on board underneath this program, the general contractor would be able to issue early work packages to like ground clearing, extension of utilities, foundations, while final design documents are still getting done and permitting for either the vertical portions of the building or the interior portions of the building. So essentially the design process is just staying just ahead of the contractor as they're moving forward. So again, that helps us to condense the project schedule, which lessens exposure to increases in construction costs. It lowers and lessens general conditions that would be exposed to the general contractor, which ultimately has passed through costs to the overall project and those type of things. So again, that's what the benefit of this allows you to be able to do versus a typical design bid build hard bid process where you have to go through a full, first you got to get your funding in place and then go through full design and then through permitting and bidding and then get a contractor involved and then start construction. So we're condensing all of that by going through this way of doing essentially a turnkey financing and construction delivery process.
Yeah, I think, from our viewpoint, from the day you say go, we would be going down 3 tracks. One, we would immediately start on the financing with the bond attorneys and have them contact your treasurer to start and attorney to start working on the bond documents. Number 2, Bill would start on his design. He'd be free to start working on his design development. And number 3, we would bring in we would bid out the construction as a CMAR, construction matter at risk, on day 1, and have him in place probably within 30 days, so that while Bill was drawing his plans, the contractor standing behind him, looking over his shoulder and making comments regarding any kind of value engineering. So you actually have all 3 aspects of the project starting on day 1.
Yep.
So I guess that's really helpful. I appreciate that. I guess another question that I have is, so the $35 million sort of WAG number. So when we set out to do this, we're going through a needs assessment right now, and the need is saying that we're going to be in over the next 20 plus years, we're going to need X amount of beds. If we were to do some sort of scaled version of that, Bill, what would 35 million get us versus the numbers that are on the higher end, that are more in line with the need that this study is determining?
Right. So again, if we were looking at a new facility, essentially, what would 35 million be able to afford? So a new facility for 35 million, which would still have a similar amount of soft cost for utility development, permits, fees, FF&E, and everything else. So looking at that from a similar type of lens and a similar type of process, ultimately that would leave the balance of the funds as a hard construction value. Looking at the current construction market and what current typical jail facilities cost, and based off of some of the numbers that we've been analyzing, you'd probably be able to afford about 130 to maybe 145 beds from a overall cost. And that would be kind of assuming things are kind of scaled down. The amount of programs would be scaled down. The amount of admin would be scaled down. Everything would be kind of scaled down. If then you kind of look at it a different way of saying, well, what if we end up doing it as what would we get for renovating or expanding your existing facility? That's a little bit harder to really be able to analyze, to be able to say, okay, how much of that would be renovation and modernization of the existing facility, and then how much of that would be remaining to actually put into an addition. That's a little bit harder to quantify, at least at this point.
Yeah, one of the things, the obvious thing here is that, we're looking at our current finances in order to make a decision that's, has a planning horizon of 25, 30 years where, given even small economic growth in the county, we're not going to be looking at the same financial situation today as we are in 30 years.
Right.
If we are going to do a scaled version to begin to reverse the trend of our, capacity issues, does it make more sense for us to look at, a different site than the downtown location, just because of that, just because it gives us a little bit more flexibility from a potential future phases perspective? I'm just trying to get my mind wrapped around sort of how we kind of take the need that's already been established versus, what the finances might look like.
Yeah, in a way it does, especially for a lower overall kind of project budget, and that whole kind of conversation there. Because as we kind of talked about, that there's on the existing site, there's really 2 options. One is you pretty much take the building as it is, and then we're trying to kind of add on to it and to provide the need and to be able to accommodate the different programs and the deficiencies. Or the alternative is what we've kind of shown of pretty much needing to kind of take a big bite of the apple, and pretty much you're replacing the existing facility on the existing site, which it's multiple phases, and it's kind of setting you in a certain size of a facility. Pretty much what we've been able to kind of show of about 240 to 250 beds. That's pretty much building out the existing site. So you are pretty limited on there. In the future, or on another site, say we pick site option 1. Then yeah, you could be able to pick a certain planning horizon based off of really what your current need is and a projected kind of need down the road, and be able to kind of design it to that, knowing that you're going to have to expand it, and it can be planned to expand it beyond the current projected need of 240 beds, which is kind of what we've been talking about this whole time of, while these budget numbers of the 74 and the 83 on the new sites, while they're planned around that size of a need, really the smart thing to be able to do is plan beyond that, not really knowing when that planning horizon or when that need would actually be needed, but that the facility could be expanded to accommodate whatever future growth and future need, whether it's 30 years, 40 years, 50 years plus down the road. And a new site would give you a lot more flexibility to incrementally grow into that over a longer period of time. We've, and that's something that we can kind of talk a little bit more about. And we've talked a little bit with the chief about, as far as kind of what's the minimum kind of planning horizon that we think that we need to be able to hit based off of the work that Chin Planning did previously on really what your population projection and forecasting really looks like, and based off of kind of current numbers and everything else, and being able to say, okay, what is the bare minimum that we can kind of do initially, and then kind of knowing that there is going to be an expansion that would be needed at some point, whether that's 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, to be able to accommodate really what that future growth actually looks like. But long story short, yes, a new site would probably provide you a little bit more flexibility with regard to that, mainly because we're having to work around an existing structure on the existing site.
So Jeff, on a different, back on the same subject, but a little bit different. So in my calculations, how we do our money, we can be comfortable with a range of, utilizing REIT 1 or REIT 2, and utilizing 09 money. So we can be comfortable between 1 to 1.5 million. If we stretch ourselves, because it's a good year, and it, who knows, we could have a great year to come for the next so many years. I see a number of 1.5 to 2.2 on the absolute stretch. But at the same time, if there's a possibility, the problem with doing it on the stretch is when you have a downturn, that money has to come from somewhere, the general fund. Is there a possibility, have you ever seen through your organization where you guys have allowed perhaps a 2-year interest only on demand put into the contract where they can choose a year to do that on?
So in other words, you would have you'd have the first 3 years of interest. Let's say year 10 or 11, you wanted, or not, that's too close to where interest only, but say year 15, you decided that you wanted to have interest only for 2 years.
Yeah, let's say year 8, year 7, because that's more likely. We have our ups or downs.
Right. I
won't be worried. It won't be hit with this first one here, but the next one in 7 years or so, 8 years, it'd be a great protection for the county if they were able to decide for those 2 years or 1 year, even at the time, to do interest only. Then it would keep them from having to lay people off while they restructure and pull themselves together, and then they're able to pay that next year without defaulting.
Right. Yeah, let me check on that. I think it is possible, but I don't want to just say that categorically yes today, but I'll get back to you on that.
No, I appreciate it, because that allows us to expand what we may or may not be able to do. Even the 35 million for the money that we don't have, but if we had that protection in there, then I think it's still a good, safe decision by the commission to stretch the funds if they have that as a backdrop to protect them.
Right. So just to be clear, so we're on the same page. In other words, what you're saying is, let's assume there's a two-year period sometime
Yeah.
when you're paying interest and principal, where all of a sudden you go, oops, we have a little downturn. So
Yes.
for years 21 and through 23, we want to pay interest only.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Let me find out about that and get back to you.
No, that's exactly what I'm talking. Think of it like a floating holiday. You got to pick your holiday.
But first of all, you have the debt service reserve, which would pick up 1 year.
Yeah.
Or
At the same time, that has to be paid for upfront somewhere too. I'm just trying to think if we had that as an extra precaution in there,
right.
that could really make a difference on stretches. For myself to decide that I'm going to vote to expend that money, I have a fear that I can only expend so much because I don't want it to come back and have to lay the people off. But if I have that as a cushion, I'm more
Right.
comfortable with expanding on the amount that we would pay,
Okay.
just with my vote. The other commissioners all have their votes too. So
Right. Okay. I'll check that out.
thank you.
Commissioner, would it also be possible to literally do that from an internal accounting process that essentially, if you're setting up and anticipating we're going to do a full 30-year, but you go through the program that was described interest only for, or no payment for the first 3 years, then interest only and whatever, that you are pretty much now setting those funds aside and then kind of, capitalizing them and holding on to them for those first 3 years while you're not paying. And that acts as your 3-year floating holiday.
Absolutely. We could set it up that way, but we could also, none of us be here and the next ones just go ahead and raid that fund.
Exactly. There's no
And
assurance.
I'm hoping they would never be used, but I'm just thinking, I've been doing financing for 30
Yeah.
years. I'm just thinking if that was an opportunity, that sure gives us a safety cushion, no matter who's in here, to be able to survive a downturn like that we've seen happen in the past.
Right.
And I'd be a lot more open-minded about expending more money or taking the greater risk.
Yeah.
As Commissioner Schutte said, we may have some great years to come, but we may not. But even at 2.2 compared to where we really are number-wise, we are hoping for a big, beautiful future because even conferring with Frank, and we can talk about it offline later, but I think we came up to comfortable is between 1 and 1.5 million if you still want to continue to paint your buildings and maintain our facilities. But we have reserves. We have a good ending fund. So there is monies that we could decide to spend above those designated funds, absent of anything that gets passed. If something was to get passed too, if the payments are low enough at the 2.2 million, we could also put that away.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for them guys?
Bill, can you remind me how big of an area, how many acres would be needed?
Oh, we were at, Sherry, do you remember? It was under 10. I think it was
It was like
Oh, it's
7.
5. Let me-
like
I
6
thought
or
5 was
7
the low end, but you wanted 7. That's
Yeah.
what I thought you had said.
I think that was about the number. And again, we didn't really know the sites, but once we got the sites and they're very flat, they don't have wetland areas or anything else. So we were able to kind of stick to the low end of that whole spectrum. So yeah, I think we were at 5 essentially to be able to cover the building footprint, the parking, the drive lanes, standoff areas, and everything else was somewhere right in that 5 to 6 acre development requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the biggest driver was really stormwater, which I think we were kind of looking in some of the numbers that kind of came out of the last presentation that came from KPFF was like a half to 3/4 of an acre detention pond or some form of structure was really what was going to be required at site 1 or 2. So it would be substantial.
Right, and so for the downtown, we didn't have to worry about that really because we had
We would most likely do some below grade detention, and with the stormwater system that's already kind of in place, being able to tie into it. And then based off of conversations with the city, with them being involved, probably incorporating and using some green roof and some other stormwater and water quality measures to help slow the inrush of stormwater into the city system. They were all open and supportive of doing something like that as a benefit. Versus out there, the stormwater infrastructure is not in place.
Thank you.
All right, Jeff, thank you so very much. I appreciated your presentation. You also did a great one when we were on the phone. I appreciated on that 100-degree day that you got it done quickly and got us motivated. I appreciated it more than you knew.
All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate the
So-
opportunity.
So Jeff and Alexander, if you can just send the PDF to me, then I can make sure it gets packaged up and gets sent off to Frank and the county and everybody else here on the call. So they have the availability to review the numbers in closer detail.
Sounds good.
Great.
Definitely good. Thank you again.
Thank you. Appreciated.
Stay cool.
Yeah,
Dude,
you as well. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, Bill, what else do you got?
Was pretty much it. That was the focus of this meeting, was to really talk about the privatized financing, the tax exempt financing options, what those values were based off of that preliminary conversation that we had the other day, which is pretty much what this is. So we wanted to get this now into your hands, and then we can kind of make a decision about what's the next step that we want to do. We're in the process of just kind of finalizing and pulling together essentially a final package based off of the 3 options that we had. And so what we would need to be able to have is some direction of, is there a more preferred option that you want us to drill down on in any more detail, whether it's the existing site option, site 1 or site 2 with full program, or if you want us to try to work with the chief and with Frank to analyze another option based off of a overall project budget that you want us to target, you know, whether it's at 35 million or another value.
Well, I'd like to see the commission come together and actually have that discussion, separately and actually look at our numbers, have them brought before us. I know I shared all my numbers that I had with Frank, but I don't know that we ever had any discussions internally. I think he sent it to the other commissioners.
He did. It was sent, Frank sent to the commissioners, myself, and to PFIC. So yeah, I think we will kind of continue to kind of do what we need to do to advance what we currently have in place. And then we'll just wait to really see direction on what you want to be done as far as that next step.
What do you have for our next meeting date on your calendar?
I believe we have one currently held for, it's, I believe, in middle of August. I thought we had one on the books, or maybe we actually canceled it based off of where.
I'm showing one on the 19th, a week from today.
Yeah, that's what I'm showing too, and I'm wondering,
Yeah.
do we have to do that one? Is that?
No, there wouldn't be. Oh yeah, there is that one there. No, there really wouldn't be, because I think you guys need to kind of circle the wagons a little bit, have some internal discussions, and then provide us with direction. So I would say probably we'll cancel that.
Okay.
Once you're the counselors have been able to, you all be able to meet and then be able to make a decision, get back to us, and then we can we can really look at what a schedule moving forward really looks like, as well as really start developing kind of agenda items for those as we move forward.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Commissioners, do we have anything left for them?
Not at the time, not at this time.
Then I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move we adjourn.
Second.
Been moved and second. We adjourn. Here, no objection. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Sherry. Take care.